What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DocuJobProjects.com in the not the best lighting in the world, but hey, this is how we roll. And today we're going to be talking about drawing from life, and I have some special guests as usual today, and I'm going to throw them in here right now. We got Mr. Fogbreaker Studios. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. How you doing, Marshall?
Doing pretty good. Where can people find you?
Fallbreaker Studios on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page as well, but most of my stuff I put up on Instagram or the
Awesome,
Discord. So but
awesome.
Instagram is the easiest place to find me.
I'm gonna put links for you guys in there too. I'm surprised I don't have Shell already in there because I think I've had her on before. So usually, if I've had you on the Early Bird Artcast, your link goes in there and stays in there for all the shows. So from here on out, you guys will be in there.
Awesome.
Shell, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing really well. I had my monthly deadline on the 20th, so I'm actually well on sleep for the most part again.
Awesome.
Awesome. And where can people find you?
The best place to find me is at heroicadventurefiction.com, all one word, no spaces, or ascensionepoch.com. But I'm Shell Presto on almost all social media, one word.
And also, you have an awesome YouTube channel.
Yes, I do, don't I?
Awesome. All right. Today I wanted to talk about the idea of drawing from life. All of us create stories and make comics. I think Shell works a little bit more on kind of the novels, but still she does work on comics from time to time as well, and illustrations. So I was curious. Well, I guess I kind of thought of this because I knew Fogbreaker was going to be in here, and I know that, and I don't want you to get into anything that is uncomfortable for you,
Oh
but
no,
I
I'm
know
I'm all good, man. No worries.
I know that I think the current story you're working on, or maybe one of them, definitely draws from life experience.
Yeah,
Can you
definitely.
tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my I guess my my mission statement story is called Ransom Notes. It is based on my time growing up in a cult, and it's not a biography by any stretch, but it is, it just kind of just takes those ideas to the next level of what pressure can do to you at different stages. And like, if you believe this, then this is what you really believe. Like, this is what the end of that line looks like. So,
Mm.
so yeah, basically my want to do comics did start from drawing from life, because I didn't start comics because I could draw comics. I started comics because I had a story I wanted to tell. So yeah, very, very close to home on the drawing from life stuff. And it really wouldn't work for me if I did it any other way, because this is like, now I have skin in the game. It's like, it's not just
Mm.
cool pictures. Like, now it's like, this is what's how something means to me. And from that, like, I do a ton of other stuff now. But yeah, I think it has to be personal for
Yeah.
me anyway, to start with. So I'm big on taking a life experience and either turning the volume way down on it or turning the volume way up on it. And because we can all relate to it on some level. It may not be a word for word situation, but you know, ogre. my story is not my story is not special. And so this is where I kind of get long winded every once in a while. It's like, my story is not special, but my story is relatable a lot more than people think. Because you hear cult and you're like, okay, well, this is not something that I've ever done before. But, we've all had situations where we felt pressure, or we've been in bad relationships. And it all it all reads the same way. It's like, so yeah, it's just, I draw from life to really sink into and not sync as in SINK, but SYNK, like to sync with everybody else. Like I love writing. Like that's kind of my thing. So it's like I love finding common ground with people in a place where they would never think to find common ground. And then add comics on top of that. And like it's a nerd salad for me. So I'm good to go.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool because with so many, I've talked to so many comic book artists and creators, and I almost, this may even be a little bit of a first. I've almost never heard of somebody getting into comics because they have a story they need to tell. And it's just really interesting because I hear that a lot. I've heard that a lot from people who write like prose books, and I've also heard the term from like writing books and stuff. Everybody has a book in them. Everybody has
Yeah.
at least one book, and I think that does actually come into play. There are certain things that you know that's not why I got into it. I got into it because I saw cool art and I was like, that's what I want to do.
Right.
um, but there is a certain aspect of that for me, at least, where I'm like, you know, there are certain things that I feel like if I don't get some of these thoughts, if I don't create some of these discussions in story form, I feel like I haven't done what I'm supposed to do in this life.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah. What's your
so
thing?
so even though I didn't come at it from that perspective, I feel like that's still a part of why I do what I do. What about you, Shell? Do you tend to draw from life when you and your husband write stories, or you work on your stories?
An interesting thing that we do actually is, um, how to put it. I mean, aside from the fact that most people will use different aspects of their personality or put like little aspects of their life in stories, one of the things, because we write a lot of science fiction and urban fantasy and stuff like that, we'll take uh, sort of weird things that happen in real life and try to make up uh, plausible but completely fantastic reason for them. A big thing that happened actually when I was at the newspaper, there was this really weird case where a there was a hobo on a railroad cart, and he had really bad chemical burns, and the paramedics went to go see him, and the it was very strange. One paramedic said they found no trace of chemicals and they didn't smell anything, and the other paramedic got really really sick and was like overcome by fumes that the other paramedic couldn't smell, and they didn't find any traces of chemicals on the guy. And it was really bizarre because the railroad company said that it was up to the police to investigate, and the railroad company or the train company said that there was no chemicals on the train, so it couldn't have happened on the train. And the railroad police passed it off to the regular police, and the regular police kind of passed it off to the fire department or the DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, and it never really got an answer, and it was like going in the circular thing. So for example, one of our stories in the East End Irregulars books is they fight a mad gasser, and he's doing this to hobos. So we kind of try to take bizarre things that happen and put them into our stories.
That's what I'm talking about. Like not the pain and suffering part, but like that's my kind of story there. I like that stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I've definitely taken things from either from life or from observation. I know Fogbreaker and Robert here and myself have talked a little bit about the conspiracy theory stuff, and I've definitely taken some inspiration from that kind of thing. And but also just from life, like things happen in life, and sometimes there's this whole thing where uh, people actually they'll base characters off of people in their life, or at least loosely. You
Mhm.
know, I tend to like, I think about Amali, from Big Wrath, the little African girl, and she's kind of based partially off of like my wife to a certain degree. There's some personality things, um, and also my wife actually gave me some input on her, on that character too, like things that she thinks a little girl would be into, because she, you know, I mean, everybody has experience with little kids and stuff, but she's you know, she's been worked as a you know, I'm trying to think of like a daycare type of thing, and she's just always been a person who's involved with little kids and stuff. So she has a better grasp on that than I do. So she's kind of helped me with that kind of input as well. Um, so, you know, I think I definitely draw from life at times.
Yeah.
So we also have Mr. Robert Ogre here, and
Oh,
there's
girl.
been
What's up,
some
man?
feedback on his mic. How you doing, Robert? Cur- you sound like a robot, like a Dalek or something. I I had to mute you, Robert. I think you have something with your microphone that's kind of sounding weird. Um, I don't know if you can do anything to change that or not, but I definitely would love to hear you chime in on this as well.
You know, in 2020 we would like have a robot on panel. Like if you watch this in like 1993, it'd be like, oh well, that makes sense. If there's a robot on the panel, you know.
I think that's funny because it's funny how you can kind of actually, to kind of bring it to the topic too, like drawing from life is interesting because it's like, even in this situation, you could be like, you could even come up with like a story of like him turning into a robot or
Right,
something. Like you take
exactly.
real life like events, and then you like, oh my gosh, one of the guys just turned into a robot. What's going on? AI is taking over. Like that could be the beginning of a story or
You,
something.
you know, it's funny. On Sunday, I went over and I checked on my in-laws, and they were deep frying a turkey, but they were doing it with an air fryer. So when I went over there, my father-in-law had a like a remote thermometer on his jacket because they were working in the front yard, and when I got over there, I was talking to him for a minute, and I'm like, I was like, imagine if I dropped in from 1986 with just like a little bit of knowledge of like what's going on in April of 2020. I would assume that this was like a thermometer or like a blood pressure thing that you would see typically on like a hospital IV stand. But because it's 2020, you're able to just to have it on your lapel
Yeah.
and monitor your vitals for like coronavirus, but it's just like just funny little things like that. Like I'm trying to learn my way around time travel, so I do a lot of time hop stuff in my mind. So I don't know, like yeah, art, like drawing from life is not always like you were saying. It's not recreating a situation on a comic book panel. It's just like what can you take from this situation, and what what kind of sauce can you add to this to make it work better.
I
Yeah.
think that's actually a really interesting point in that I think some people, do, when they try to do something that's biographical or semi-biographical, um, lot. I guess the thing is, life is not always interesting,
Right.
um, and I think that it kind of behooves us to, uh, like, say there's some interesting aspect of your life, but your life in and of itself isn't something that people might go ooh and ah, I want to read that.
Right,
um,
exactly.
it's like when you watch movies based on real life events. There's nothing wrong with calling it fiction or biographical fiction or something,
Right.
and either taking parts of your story and mixing it with someone else's story, or making completely fictional events, or adding a character or something. And likewise, if you I think one of the things you have to be careful of, and I think when people start trying to do sort of semi biographical stuff, is you often don't want to make, if you say it's sort of fictional, you're going to offend less people, because if you make it completely biographical, then everyone in your life is going to know like exactly who you're talking about.
Right. Then it becomes uncomfortable.
And it's like, maybe your relationship with your mom is great, but you're literally portraying your mom in this scene. So if you make her look like someone else and you give her a different name,
Right.
you could say, no, that's not really my mom. I mean, there's a little bit in there, but
Right.
you have to be careful about offending people in those instances.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's funny too because I just finally watched The Social Network yesterday,
Yeah.
and it popped up, I think on Hulu or one of the Netflix or something. And you know, my wife and I were both like, I wonder if this is how it really turned out, and if it was really like that. And it was an interesting movie, but you're totally right. Like, they kind of start off the movie with like a relationship situation, even though the story really is about how Facebook started and kind of the guy's, kind of the way he is, Mark Zuckerberg, and how he relates with people. But it was more on a social, like a human to human thing. They tried to kind of bring that in to start with. And, I wonder if some of that stuff was real, or how true to life it was.
Right.
I think it's interesting too, because people do write like autobio stuff. There's music and stuff too, where people draw from life a lot of times, and those kind of creations. And, you know, it's funny because there is a certain thing to trying to be like authentic and
Mhm.
kind of, I don't know, trying to put stuff out there, and kind of walking that line is a tough thing. Like, I have this really interesting story in my past, and it has to do with this person and this person. If I put it out there, in a song or in a comic book or something, it could have a really big impact, but I could
Yeah.
also be hurting people I love, and
Yeah.
it's like you have to be like, well, I think for me, I tend to, if I do take some of that stuff from life, I tend to fictionalize it pretty drastically, because I actually don't want the people in my life to necessarily detect some
Right.
of that stuff, because I'm
Right.
not trying to offend them, but at the
Yeah.
same time, that stuff can be helpful, for stories. And we have a couple comments in here I want to get to real quick. This is did I put up a question without even putting up a question. I didn't mean to click on that, but let's see. Dave Hingley says, question for the group. What about fictitious biography for a historical character? Shell, I think you've had some experience with historical characters.
I am really wishing that Mike was up and on this right now. So Mike was a history minor in college, and he's always had a deep love of history. So, one of the things is with our Ascension Epoch books, we meld fact and fiction. Um, so we have our jumping off point is War of the Worlds actually happens in like 1898, and so we have a really divergent alternate history, but we still put real figures in. And I'm trying. I'm running a blank because I do that when I'm on these live streams and I get nervous. But for example, there was a man in, I believe, California. Mike's gonna shake his head at me for getting this wrong. Um, but he called himself the Emperor of the Americas, and he was a really flamboyant character. He was actually homeless, but he became like a local celebrity, and we have this whole big thing with the secret history of the Americas. We do it specifically in our Challenger Confidential Copper Knights and Granite Men book, where we take some things about like folklore and stuff like that, and we try to tie it into this whole big conspiracy with a character called the Copper Knight. But part of it was that we said this one person that was kind of an eccentric, possibly a little mad hobo from California, who was big in the early 1900s. Was actually like this important character who came about and was actually part of the secret line of the Emperor of America, and they're looking for the armor that he had. And we also
Huh.
tie that back into Robert Chambers' The King in Yellow book, which is a piece of awesome uh, horror fiction that's in the public domain. So that's one of our things. Norton, Emperor Norton. If you look him up, it's an interesting, fascinating story. But that's one example of where you kind of try to take something and you do as much research as you can. And historical characters are really interesting because you often just can't get the full story. You only have what's written on them, and it's not like now where like uh, George Washington wasn't keeping a Facebook. You don't know his every thought left and right. So yeah, I think, and then you have to be careful too, because the more authentic you try to get, the more you're going to find that one person that's like, they didn't have that type of gun back
Fact
then,
checking
and
everything you do in your book or whatever. Yeah.
so that's one of the joys of going fantastical with it too. Like if
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln vampire killer, who's going to fact check that?
Yeah, that's a good point. How much do you take a creative license with that kind of stuff? Um, let's see. I'm trying to see another thing. Dave Hingley says, "Wow, Fogbreaker, you say your story isn't special, but it's certainly unique. I am instantly interested in your story." That's exactly the same reaction I had when I heard about your story too.
I
Uh,
guess I guess when when you do it, it's what you do. But if you haven't done it, I'm sure I would be interested in it too. But don't be interested in how I was interested in it, because that's what gets you in trouble.
Actually, so and Michael Hing Art says, "Good to put a name to the face to some of you folks." Just so you know, don't forget, Shell has a YouTube channel, and also Fogbreaker has been on a YouTube channel with Robert Ogre's YouTube.
Yep.
So I'll put the links to those in the description. You guys, there's so many good videos that both of them have done. It's worthwhile, I would say. Let's see if there what else we have. People are talking about Emperor Norton. There was one I wanted to, Peter Empyrean Vol, also known as Peter Seckler, brought this up too, but I'm going to bring up Michael Hingzart because he said both, but he said Persepolis,
Mhm.
mouse blankets are autobiographical or biographical. I don't know what Persepolis is, but Peter brought that up as well. Um, but I know the other ones are supposed to be really good, and I
I
haven't read any of those actually.
I've read Mouse, and Mouse is kind of astounding. And it's funny because it's like in this very sketchy, supremely cartoonish style. But it's by Art Spiegelman, and it tells the story. Actually, it's kind of dually biographical because it's autobiographical. It's the story of Art Spiegelman as a young man dealing with his father, and he's very frustrated because he has a uh, lot of strange habits. Like he never throws anything out. He's a hoarder. But then it talks about that in contrast, and it's biographical of his father, who lived in. He was in Auschwitz. So he was a Jew stuck in a German internment camp and just surviving. And it's ridiculously strange how powerful a story you can tell with cartoon mice. And it's really great for anyone just starting out and just starting out drawings. Like, if you feel like you have a story to tell and you're like, oh, but my art's not up to par, I can't do it. You should totally check out Mouse, because it'll tell you that there are so many things you can convey without, drawing like Andrew Loomis and I don't know, Jim Lee and all of them.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of the most celebrated comics in comicdom, and that's a great point, I think. So, I am sorry to see that Robert wasn't able to join us. He was, but he had some technical difficulties. But hopefully next time. It sounds like he is going. You guys are going to start back up on Sunday.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna start our Creative Chaos channel back up again. Get some
Awesome.
more videos.
And just so you guys know, we had just kind of little insider info for in the Discord, and guys, just definitely check out the AAA Discord. It's ramping up. It already has been. It's a lot of cool things are going on. Big shout out to Len Jennings, who created a really cool logo for it, and even kind of like a little bit of a slogan, which I think is pretty cool. The things are going on there that are really cool. But in the Discord, both Shell and Fogbreaker are very much involved. And one of the things is there was one section, the self promo section, where we all put our videos when we make them. There was a bot that kind of automatically put those there. I don't know if you knew, Fogbreaker, but also let Robert know that doesn't happen anymore.
Okay.
Canceled the bot, so you guys are gonna just make sure you put your links in there, because I definitely want to see your videos.
All right, good deal. Yeah,
go there and the video suggestions section all the time to watch videos.
Awesome. Good deal.
So anyways, other than that, it is time for me to get over to the good old day job. So once again, Shell, where can people find you?
Heroicadventurefiction.com, all one word, no spaces. You could read a bunch of my stories and see my illustrations there. Also ascensionepoch.com, one word, no spaces. And I'm Shell Presto on a bunch of things, including, in YouTube, if you search for Shell Presto, you'll find me.
Awesome. And once again, I definitely recommend checking her stuff out. I'll put some link in the description so that they're permanently in there for these early bird Artcasts. And Fogbreaker, where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram primarily at Fogbreaker Studios, just like it's spelled. I am on Facebook as Jason Alexander, and I have a Fogbreaker Studios page. But like I said, I usually share everything backwards from my Instagram. So I'm either there or I'm on a Discord. So
awesome. That's the first time I've heard your name, so now I have a name.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Also known as I am not George Costanza, but that's another story for another time.
And you definitely are not George Costanza. And,
nope.
I'm not either, but I am Marshall Lee, and you guys know where to find me, donkeyjawprojects.com and Marsh Comics on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok if I ever go back there. I think that site has actually been kind of popping off a lot lately because people have like all this time on their hands and
right. Yep.
Starting to get into it. It's a pretty fun app. But anyways, so that's where you can find me. And other than that, thank you guys for hanging out with me this morning, and thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And you guys are always welcome to come on. And everybody watching on the the playback, thank you for watching. Let us know how you draw from life with your creations in the comments. And other than that, we will talk to you on the next one.
All right. Y'all be good. Take care.